Tom Suter, founder and president of the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center. And we're going to be talking today about the concept of a mobile center of excellence in the federal government. And thanks again to Emergent and Red Hat for putting this on for us and providing the facilities, and thank you very much. And I will say this will be the first of a monthly series that we're going to talk about mobile challenges and opportunities. So before we get into the panel, I just kind of wanted to set the stage a little bit of where we are in mobility. So if you can kind of picture yourself back in 2008, the federal government was primarily BlackBerry, and it worked with BlackBerry Enterprise Server, and everybody pretty much had the exact same setup. Smartphones started to come out. First in 2008, we had Apple came out with the iPhone. A couple years later, Samsung and other Android started using the Android operating systems, other telephone manufacturers, and gradually iPad actually got released in May of 2011. So it's been a while. Mobility's been moving along. The federal government back in 2012 banded together to develop a concept called the Digital Government Strategy, and that was a President Obama memo kind of detailing how we're going to move forward in mobility. Well, 4 years later, we've gotten a lot done. Basically, the federal government is using mobile device management pretty consistently throughout a lot of the agencies. And where are we? We have email, we have calendar, we have it on our iPhone at least, we have it on our Samsung device, but we're pretty much in exactly the same spot that we were back in 2008. But here's where we want to go. Here's where the federal government realizes they need to go. How do I do field services when everything is pretty much paper-based? I'm doing a paper-based survey. How do I get it on my tablet or my smartphone? How do I do my job? How do I connect to my back-end systems, whether I'm an FBI agent trying to catch bad guys, or on the military overseas trying to do some things to get our adversaries to collect intelligence, et cetera, et cetera. To even the civilian side, doing field services. I'm doing surveys, population. We've got this big event coming up at 2020 with the U.S. Census, where we're going to go door to door to all the homes in the U.S. And 10 years ago, it was a paper-based system. So this is the state of where we are now. The federal government's kind of banded around a concept called a mobile center of excellence, where an agency would pool everything together, all their folks, their concepts, and kind of have a center of gravity in each of the agencies. So we're going to talk to a panel of experts. We have with us today Steve Brady with Red Hat, John Johnson with the GSA, and Rick Walsh with the U.S. Army. So we're going to kind of kick things off with Steve on the conceptual aspect of this, and just for some talking points. So thank you,
Sure.
Steve.
Thanks, Tom. So one thing that we realized here at Red Hat, obviously, us being the open source leader, with mobility, really what we wanted to do is provide some frameworks, guidance, and best practices for maintaining an open source, mobile center of excellence, or an open source mobile framework. Within the mobile challenges that you see in the government, there's a lot of things that make it very, very difficult to put out a meaningful mobile application. Obviously, there's mobile applications that are out there right now. The DoD does have a store. The Defense Health Agency is starting to do some things. There's a lot of these disparate groups downstream that have all been building kind of on their own without, any real guidance in terms of how to do it. So some of the things that we've seen that hinders an agency from fully realizing the potential of mobility are things like back-end integration. So, even though they can, submit the mobile applications and they have that MDM, they have email, their calendars, they can make phone calls, they can't really access anything that's meaningful in terms of data. They can't collect that data and then have it fed back to databases. Especially, if they're legacy databases, that's quite a challenge. We see that quite frequently. The other thing is mobile SME. While there are subject matter experts in the government and systems integrators, there's not really an abundance of them that's keeping up on the best trends, especially in the commercial sector that really drives a lot of that technology. So, really what we want to try to do is create a pipeline of commercial technologies and best practices and move those into the federal government space, quickly as needed. There's third-party developers, so there's a lot of cool tools out there that the federal government should want to use. A really good use case is Pokemon Go, which was built off of Ingress. It would be really, really neat to utilize that technology to do, mobile challenging or training out in the field, right? How do you make geolocation, geocaching out in real-world scenarios, utilizing that technology? Well, it's kind of hard to do right now. So one thing that we want to do is start taking kind of these greenfield or pie-in-the-sky projects, especially if they have open source components, which Pokemon Go, the platform that it's built off of, does. How do we integrate those in and make those accessible so that when agencies want to go out and create prototypes, they can do it with those open source technologies. One thing that we also see is, every agency and every program, they've always been using different tools. Nobody was really standardized on a tool. So you have folks using things like Appcelerator or App Machine or Cordova or Xamarin. How do you create best practices and frameworks around it when there's so many different toolkits being used? We believe that developers are going to use whatever developers are going to use, and so you need to provide them with an open source, again, framework that allows for any of those toolkits to be used, without being exclusionary. Another thing we've seen, and actually this is more on the forefront here, if you go down, is the app approval process. So NIST and NIOP have done a very good job of collating all of those standards, and Department of Homeland Security as well as DISA has created app vetting processes that other agencies can look to for guidance. DISA has the purebred model. DHA is in the process of finalizing their car wash. So something like that is there's frameworks out there that the government's already put together that other agencies can draw on, and there's also a great there's a bunch of third-party tools that make that approval process very seamless. So that's really exciting to have. Communication and vision and strategy. One thing we think is really important around once you set up a Mobile Center of Excellence in your agency is that you actually have a communication strategy and a vision on how to allow downstream programs to utilize that. How do you make sure that they, all of your different programs are keeping up on the best practices? How do you take communication down from a program that wants to do something up to the top, standardize it, and then make accessible to all the rest of the programs? Having that communication and vision strategy is very, very important. Next thing to kind of consider is speed to market. One of the reasons for Mobile Center of Excellence in general is that, agility, right? Agile development is, something that everybody likes to say that they do, but in reality, they don't really have the capabilities. When you're kind of out there and you're looking Mobile Center of Excellence, one of the reasons to, actually implement something like that is to have the templates and standardization there so that you can get an app out. Let's say if there's an emergency in FEMA, right? If you have a hurricane, you should be able to pump out an app within a matter of a day or two, and have that accessible to anybody that's going to need it out in the field. That's something that we feel is paramount, especially in the emergency management sector. Managing a roadmap and priorities, obviously you have to match up the demand from your stakeholders and match that up with priority roadmaps, resources, both internal and external, budget, contracting vehicles. All of that stuff has to be tied in together so that you don't have any hiccups and it doesn't really mess with your mobile application roadmap. One of the more important things, and this is obviously coming from Red Hat side, is continuous CI/CD. With DevOps becoming more and more of a common term, continuous integration and continuous deployment is something that is going to be very important for agencies. How do you version those apps out? How do you get continuous feedback and make iterative changes to your mobile application so that they're meaningful to the end user. That's something that we feel, needs to be taken into consideration, whether it's a short-term application or a long-term application. And then deployment. How do you get it out in the stores? How do you manage it out in the stores? How do you make it accessible to the end users? Those are all the different components that we see, being very, very essential to a mobile center of excellence. One of the things that we really do preach here, again, us being the open source leader, is an open approach to agency mobile applications. So as you're building out this strategy, you want to make sure that everything you have is reusable. So make sure that, if you're going to build one service, whether it be an authentication service or a tie back to a system, make sure that you can use that among your other mobile applications in your roadmap. One of the key components, one of the things that makes that pretty easy is microservices. And if you're not familiar with microservices, we'll be talking about that at a webinar down the road. But have templates, have shared resources, take advantage of assets that other programs have built and make those shareable with other programs that might have the same need. That's really going to cut down on cost and time to deployment. The next thing is, as I mentioned, is bring your own tools. Make sure that they're flexible and future-proof. There's a lot of open source tools out there to build mobile applications right now, that are pretty slick. Because of the size of those communities, like Node.js is one programming language. You got CocoaPods for Apple. Those are all open source and totally free. I would highly recommend that you go out and explore those. Those make coding and getting function into mobile applications way easier. Let's see. The platforms and process, I already mentioned, some of the problems around it. There's actually a very succinct process that you're going to want to implement, and we'll be talking about that down the road too. But just start to put your minds around some of these things, platforms and processes, as you're looking to build out your mobile center of excellence. Next thing is constant education, innovation labs, outside technologies to improve process. Go out and learn from commercial industries, what they're doing. You can basically go out and see what the financial sector is doing and tie a lot of that back into what agencies are doing. You can go out to the healthcare industry and see what they're doing out in healthcare. I was just at the Connected Care Symposium yesterday at the Gaylord Hotel, and that was a big component. Was how do we match in the federal government with all the healthcare agencies? How do we match the rate of innovation that they have in the private side? So that's something that is very important. Is having those innovation labs or setting those up. Bringing in outside technologies that you normally wouldn't, or outside vendors. To kind of give you a different aspect and a different component of how you need to set that up. The last thing that I do want to put in here is, as you're building out your mobile center of excellence, it is an excellent idea to have a standardized portal where your programs can share information. They can share apps that they've done. They can share wireframes. They can ticket if there's any problems that they're noticing with the technology. If somebody sees or implements a best practice, they can share that with the rest of the group. So there's more of a central portal that everybody can kind of access at their leisure as needed. So Tom, I think that's all I got for now.
Yeah. Well,
Thank you, guys.
I'm going to ask you a question.
Sure.
So for this mobile center of excellence, one of the main challenges that we've seen out there in the federal government is the federal government has many legacy systems. Mm-hmm. Some of these they predated the big cell phone that you see in Wall Street. So these are very old systems. How are they going to take that information out of the old systems? What's the construct for that and put it on my brand new mobile device? So
one of the newer technologies that's come out in the past 2.5 years is what's been coined the mobile backend as a service. So there's a lot of tools out there that are mobile front end as a service, and I mentioned some of those things like MobileSmith or App Machine, which are really drag and drop simple interfaces on the front end. Really what makes an app meaningful is data and user experience. And so mobile backend as a service utilizes things like microservices and containers and provides a very easy interface to sync in to your legacy systems. There's also some peripheral technologies that will allow those legacy systems to talk. And then, things like rules engines, business rules, management, where you can do dynamic types of data feeds to mobile applications.
Great, great. We're going to, I'm going to introduce Rick Walsh, who leads the mobile efforts at the Army. And Rick's been in the game now for since the beginning, as far as back as I go at least. And he's been with the Army until recently. He went to DISA for a while and then came back to the Army, and he's in the process of setting up a mobile center of excellence. So thank you, Rick.
Yes, good morning. This is Rick Walsh, and appreciate that introduction. Great presentation on the what Red Hat's able to do. You really hit home with some great items that we're looking at. One, we have just provided to General Farrell the Army's mobile vision, and in looking at our vision, we're looking at not what we can do today, but really a vision statement. What can the Army do in 2025 and beyond? The idea there is we have a critical need in the Army to become, well, in the DoD really, to become more efficient and more effective at what we do. Budgets are being cut. We're getting constrained in terms of personnel. We don't have as many people anymore with the budgets and stuff going on. So we've got to get the people we have and the future people that we're going to bring into the Army more effective and efficient at what they do. So that's our vision. So our vision is, how do we enable the future worker to basically take advantage of better ways to do the job? And we're looking at mobile as the enabler for that. You brought some very interesting points forward on speed to market. The traditional IT as we develop in the Army can take anywhere from 6 months to 6 years to put on a workspace. That's a traditional workspace. Now, so when we look at mobile, mobile's more focused for the Army. Mobile's more focused on the task, not at the big picture scenario. So when I say that, what I'm looking for is a application that I can provide to a user to do a specific task, and I can develop that application in a matter of days versus months. A lot of times the shelf life of a mobile application is less than 30 days. You build it, you want it, you deploy it, you act on it, and then at the end of 30 days that application can be retired or put into archives. So we're setting that up. So that's kind of where we want to go in the Army, and some of the ways that we're trying to do that is we're standing up what we call the Coalition of Army Mobile Application Centers. And what we've done is we've leveraged 3 organizations, 3 laboratories across the Army to do our mobile applications vetting. So what that means is that as the CIOG6, as the headquarters Army, we are working with these organizations to actually do the application vetting. Now again, that's in accordance with the NIAP standards, the NSA standards, to make sure that we don't introduce any risk to the environment. When I say the environment, I'm talking about the internet, the NIPRNet that we use in the DoD space. So with my centers, with the centers that we've set up, the CAMAC, and by the way, the Army really thinks it's important to write clever acronyms, and this is one of those acronyms that works forwards or backwards, so you can't misspell it as long as you got the letters right. So it was done that way on purpose. CACMAC. So I can vet an app in as little as 30 days. So that's from 0 to deployment, and then we have our processes set up that the originating organization is responsible for the sustainment. Okay, so it goes into, and again, we're looking at managed applications on managed devices. The Army right now, today only, is we have not fully embraced, we're working on it in our future scope, but we have not fully embraced BYOD. Okay, so I'll pause for questions or pause for comments.
Rick, I have a question.
Yes, please.
So how many apps have in your system, and how do you store it, and where do you kind of project things to go out in the next few years as the Army goes more mobile?
Well, so right now we're using the DISA, the DoD Enterprise Mobile Application Store, as our distribution mechanism. I am getting ready to provide to DISA, based on our processes, 150 mobile applications for the Army use. I have that many. The Army's been using mobile apps independent of DISA on Xbox, PSP, in the Sony, PlayStation. So we do a lot of game simulations. We do a lot of training in terms of applications that work on alternative workspaces. So I have, like I said, I have Xbox One, I have Sony PlayStations. We have all that in our inventory, and what we're trying to do is participate. It is our goal in the Army to participate in the DoD enterprise to the greatest extent possible. Two reasons there. I want to leverage what other people are doing, so I want to basically, for lack of a better term, borrow the applications built by the Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps, and I want to share my applications with them. So we want to get to a DoD standard where we build once and share all. So DoD, DISA is providing my mobile application store right now, and working with DISA, we're looking to stand up a enterprise store. Our applications are maintained there. They're archived there. Maintenance is pushed back on the originating organization, and in this case, that would go back through one of my 3 mobile application centers to actually work with the originating organization to have that done.
Great. Good background, Rick. And batting cleanup, we have John Johnson. And John is the mobile lead at GSA, and his mission primarily is not internal, but it's really government-wide mobility. So thank you, John.
No, thanks a lot, Tom, and thank you, Steve, and thank you, Rick. I always like listening to you because I always learn something when I do. This is a fascinating conversation because there's so many things that tie together. We've been talking at it at an application-specific, from an application-specific framework, but as I'm writing my notes down from what each of you guys are saying, this really does tie together in what we've been doing with the mobile services category team. Let me take one backup step. Tom talked initially about the emergence of mobile in government, moving from BlackBerry to a much more diverse device posture, which required federal agencies to completely reconfigure their back end to deal with this new entrant into the marketplace. And although that is not as quick as some like to see it, when you think about it, to turn around an entire infrastructure to support 1.5 million devices across the federal government that are no longer centric to one manufacturer, but now are much more diverse, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. Now we, as a government, have continued to approach it as Steve was talking about, from a voice calendar email perspective, but as both Steve and Rick had mentioned, in order to really fully enable mobile in the federal government, we need to be looking at it differently and executing it a little bit differently than just voice, calendar, and email. So let me start by talking a little bit about the mobile services category team. This was a team that was developed or chartered by OMB on August 4th with their memo M-16-20 that established this group in government that is being led by DoD, DHS, Department of State, OMB, and GSA. Now, there's significantly greater number of agencies that are actually participating in this thing, like USDA, like EPA, like Energy, like Department of Justice, FBI, so large groups, component groups. We were initially tasked to do 3 things before the end of this calendar year. 1, develop a strategic roadmap for the federal government when it comes to mobile services. Number 2, develop device management guidance. And number 3, this is more GSA-centric, but study a brokerage model to see if there's a way that the federal government can help leverage economies of scale for small agencies when it comes to the purchasing of their carrier services and devices. Let me jump right to the mobile services roadmap, though, because this really fits in. I mean, I loved what Steve was talking about, because as he was talking about this mobile center of excellence when it comes to application development and deployment, we are taking the exact same framework when it comes to mobility in the federal government. Well, I keep taking steps back, so if I keep taking a step back, I'll end up off the roof or out the door. When you talk to people who don't know what they're talking about, when they think mobile and government, they think wireless carrier services and devices. When you talk to people that know what they're talking about, like Rick, mobile is a heck of a lot more than just that, right? It's the back-end security, it's the front-end security, it's the application security, the application development, it's middleware, it is a lot more than just that simple basic carrier services and devices. What we're doing in the MSCT with our strategy over this fiscal year 17 is define what that space means. Define what mobile means. And by defining mobile, you're actually defining the subcomponents associated with mobile. And so we all know what telecom carrier service and devices mean. We've done a very good job of defining MDM, EMM, although we use different language sometimes. It really kind of functions and means the same thing. Same thing with application vetting tools, and that is an emerging trend and an emerging space. But what do we mean by device as a service? What do we mean by mobile backend as a service? The goal of this team is to A, define the terms, then B, define the requirements associated with those terms, C, identify the capable providers who fit that space and are capable of providing those services or solutions into the federal government, and then D, map the ability to procure through existing government-wide resources. We are taking the same approach that Steve outlined when he talked about standards, when he talked about communication, when he talked about agility and template, developing templates, developing standards. The last thing that we want to do at GSA is create another vehicle that ends up being behind the trend when it comes to the technology, while at the same time doesn't really satisfy people's needs, like Rick, who's skating to the puck rather than chasing it. And so this is the way to do that. You know, the interesting thing, or the nice thing, is that there are multiple centers of excellence, not only within government, but also within industry. We see our role in the MSCT as being I don't even want to say information broker, because it's not really we're not just brokering information. We are facilitating communication in a way that exactly as Rick was saying, leverages what others has done while also sharing what each agency has been doing, and opportunities for industry to share what it is that they have going on, where things are going, so people can plan accordingly and appropriately. I could talk more, but I won't. So Tom, you have any other questions?
Yeah, I do. If you kind of go back, here we are going back in time again, back to 2012 and the digital government strategy. There was a 5.5 deliverable that you worked on. Maybe you can talk about that, and maybe how you can take that to the next level with a new document.
Perfect. And so, one of the reasons why creating and working on and beginning delivering on things associated with the mobile services category team is that our network has already been in place. Our network has been in place since the digital government strategy. The people that swim in mobile government, we're a small pond, and all the fish know each other. And so when we were called upon to do this, we just blew the whistle and called the people that we know who were already working in this space. And when I say people working in this space, through the CIO Council, Mobile Technology Tiger Team, through the network that we have and share with Tom over at ATARC and with others. Now, when we were asked to do develop a mobile device management platform back in 2012, people were automatically thinking vehicle. We turned that on its head. It was an immature technology at the time. There were more players than there were, there were over 300 solutions at the time that were claiming to be MDM back in 2012. Now, there are not that many players now, but really it was too early in order to try to fix that marketplace. So what did we do? Along with DHS, DOD, and others who were creating the security baseline, we simultaneously developed the security baseline associated with mobile device and application management and created what agencies could use for technical requirements in order to buy. What's been happening since? Since then, people have not just stopped working on that stuff. DHS, S&T, NIST, others continue to sort of refine what it is that's been done. Back in 2012, they were refining what that baseline meant and what was really required from a security standpoint. And so moving forward, as we're revisiting EMM, MDM, call it what you will, we're going to be really leveraging the intelligence that DHS, NIST, and others have already been doing, like NIST's testing lab, where they've been looking at EMM solutions and indicating, which ones actually pass security muster or not, and then sharing all of that information to agencies. So agencies know, A, what it is that we're talking about when we're talking about EMM, B, having technical requirements that are not specific to one vendor, but common to all, as well as being common to all, at least to the maximum extent practical, common to agencies. They'll have a list of pre-vetted solutions that NIST had already taken care of so that they can go and buy more expedient. It's all about decreasing costs. We're looking to decrease the cost of transactions. Sometimes, we all want better pricing. We all want lower pricing. That's great. When I think of savings, however, which is a big component of category management, savings are not only a component of better pricing, but decrease costs. And so how can we make it easier for Rick to buy what he needs when he's deploying over there? Or how can Rick, developing what he does, how can that information be articulated to other agencies so that not everybody is working on different learning curves over time? And we're going to be doing so. We're taking that same methodology that we used for that initial 5.5 deliverable with the digital government strategy, and we're applying it to the various components of mobile. Now, we're going to be able to do that pretty quickly with MDM. We're going to be able to do that pretty quickly with like telecommunication expense management, mobile lifecycle expense management. There are other components of mobility that are going to take a little bit more time. We're not creating a new vehicle for MBAS, but we do want to help define that space and make it easier for agencies to buy and make it easier for industry to be able to satisfy the needs of agencies. Other components like IoT, NOT, shoot, man, we'll be talking about that for the next 2 years. So how do we keep our fingers on the pulse of where that is, what's happening in that space, where is it going, so that we can remain, as Steve was talking about, agile in terms of what we can provide to agencies to make it easier on them, and simultaneously make it easier on industry in order to match buyers with sellers and sellers with buyers.
Great. Well, we want to open it up for questions. There's a little place on your screen in the bottom right-hand corner to make it more of a conversation. Maybe we could talk a little bit, and we'll just open it up to everybody here, is what are some of the areas? I know we had some things, John, that you had in the roadmap that kind of spelled out the different challenge areas and, challenge opportunity areas. We talked a little bit about MBAS. You touched a little bit about IoT. What are some of the areas that kind of need work? So you have this Mobile Center of Excellence. What are some of the challenges still out there? And maybe we can talk about them a little bit.
Yeah. Tom, this is Rick. I got a question for the group, and I'd like everyone to think about this because I need help. We've talked about technology. We've talked about putting technology in place. We're actually operating mobile right now, and I'll call it as the Field of Dreams scenario. We're going to build it, and people are just going to say, wow, that's great, and I'm going to use it. We're not finding that to be successful in the Army. So what I need help is, how do I enable the worker? How do I make mobile not something that they're going to see and want to do, but something that allows them to move forward? And I'm looking at, how do I enable telework? How do I move, what policies, what procedures, what pieces of paper that we operate in the government on, how do I change those to make mobile real. I know GSA's got some great stuff going on with their hoteling in the offices, but those are kinds of things that I think we need to share outside technology, but share in terms of the processes and procedures, not in the technology. So my Mobile Center of Excellence needs to focus on not the technology, of course, but how do I enable my workers? How do I change the paradigm from being in the office to being in my car, being at home, or being in the airport? That's where I need help.
Tom, you're asking a big question, man, because the technology is the easy part. How do you change the culture? How do you change?
Exactly.
How do you shift people from a path-dependent sort of operational model to one that is less path-dependent? That's a big question, man. That's a big question.
I've got a good example. At one agency, we're converting the paperwork in the field, and you're going to use your mobile device to input it in real time. What happens to the central processing agency that took the paper forms and had to type them into the computer? What happened to the people that worked on the paper forms before? Now I need new skills. So it's almost like kind of back to the data center thing. If I'm going to go to the cloud, what happens to all my folks in the data center?
Right.
So I would say those are ones that are real problems that need to be addressed. And how do I repurpose the people that I have for this massive change in the business process?
Yeah, I think just as to color up on that comment, and that's spot on, Tom. The adoption, if we integrate and adopt mobile properly in the DoD workspace, in the federal workspace, which I hope we are, it's as dynamic a change to the way we do our jobs as it was we got the first PCs on our desktops. We're changing the way people do their job. Now, think about it, and this is just some really cool facts. If you run the numbers and you look at people under the age of 35, 80% of those people have a smartphone. If you look at that same number of people over the age of 35, it's less than 15%. If you look at that same group of people under the age of 35, they have anywhere from 15 to 30 applications open at any one time on their smartphone, smart device. If you look at that same group over 35, it's less than 10. Now, why is that? So, again, that's a cultural change where mobile has become part of the younger generation's life, where in the older generation, i.e. me, we call them gray hair and bluebeards affectionately, are adverse to mobile because it's not what I know. So, again, to me, this is where I need the most help, and you said it. It's a tough question, but it's one that we need to address.
Well, I think too, a lot of that ties into retaining talent. As the demographics kind of start aging, you're going to have to implement, workforce solutions that do allow for, what a younger generation is going to expect when they go into the workforce. Especially on the commercial side, a lot of folks want to work from home at least 1 or 2 or 3 days a week. A lot of places offer remote work now. Providing those solutions and being able to work wherever you want, whether it be a coffee shop or, on your phone. Now, obviously, there's security issues, especially within the Army, but that would be kind of a pie in the sky, dream solution to be, working on some Army specific projects from a Starbucks, right?
Yeah, I'm going to stick up a little bit for the older folks because I'm becoming one of them pretty fast at an alarming rate. I did a project with an agency, and they had 3,000 field workers, and the average age of the field worker was approximately 60. One of the field workers was 93. Mm-hmm. He's still with us, as far as I'm concerned. As far as I know, he's been hanging in there doing field work on a part-time basis. But they bought into the idea that their job is easier. If you can give them a good solution that makes their job easier, that's more time at home. That's more time not doing the paperwork at the end of the day. Nobody wants to do paperwork at the end of the day. They don't care about increasing their hours and because of that. So if you can give them a good experience that helps them do their jobs better, I think they'll be all in. I mean, and law enforcement has the same issues. Nobody likes doing 2 hours of paperwork at the end of the day. So that field worker use case is pretty obvious. Okay, so we're still waiting for some questions. We've got a shy group out there.
Well, let's go back to,
okay.
while we're waiting, let's go back to what Tom was talking about too, and it's interesting. So Tom, by default then, your mobile, your definition of mobile, and this is one of the things that we're trying to help out with too, has been more conceptual than anything else. And I've heard this definition before by our friends over in Navy and other places. So when I say, what do you mean by mobile? Their response is being able to work anywhere, any place, anytime on any device. Now that is a perfectly acceptable conceptual framework to work for technology to work towards. But in my mind, it's always been sort of a loose conceptual definition than something a little bit more concrete. But using that definition, it begs the question: what ends up being a mobile device? Laptops in that definition now become a mobile device just as well as any tablet or smartphone does, especially when you're applying it to a telework environment and pushing the VPN out and securing the network associated with that, which is a slightly different, at least from a technical point of view, slightly different architecture than you would be using a mobile, a tablet or a smartphone. When we switched over to GSA, and I was living 15 minutes up the road, door to door, when we had an office, before instituting telework, and it was great. And they said, you got to telework because you got to practice. I said, you could be kidding me. I'm 15 minutes up the road. What do I need to telework for? No, I'm not going to do it. And then we moved. Now I have to go down to D.C., and although let's just say you adjust, and you adjust pretty quickly, right? When the technology is there that allows you to, and you get used to working from home, used to communicating probably a little bit more, used to accessing what you need to on your device. It's kind of nice, man. You've got your kitchen there. You're making your own coffee. You're at the same time. There is an increase in efficiency that accompanies it. To your point, how do you need policies, or is it just a matter of pilots that can continue to enable that? The biggest challenge that we had was really on the supervisors more so than anything else. If I can't see you, I can't manage you, and they had to get out of that mentality. That ended up being a sort of a work output measurement rather than a backside into a seat. I need to see you there in order to feel comfortable that you're actually doing anything. Kind of an approach.
So maybe we can talk about some of the other challenges that we're running into in the federal government. I know maybe we can talk a little bit about. One of the things is you're trying to link into your back-end systems. Steve talked a little bit about mobile back-end as a service. How about, where are we, and maybe Rick, you might want to handle this, where are we on identity management? Because I want to be able to use my phone to access my back-end system now, and that's not an easy solution, and I think it would be helpful to kind of frame that issue, and if you don't mind, Rick.
Not at all. I really think what you're getting to is identity management, or the user. If we talk to user, there are 5 components to mobile: the user, the data, the device, the applications, and the network. Okay, we need to build all those as the ecosystem, or enable all those to work together to create mobile, this mobile capability or environment that we want to go to. Looking at identity management, or the user component of it, is probably the most critical component of our ecosystem, in the sense that if I don't have a user, why am I mobile? If I don't have transport, I can't be mobile. So we're working with DISA right now. We're getting ready, and we're training our staff on the purebred, the derived credentials capability, which will allow us to place the current DoD PKI capabilities, or certificates on a mobile device so that the users of those devices can connect back into shared resources and enabled resources using their credentials without having to carry a secondary device, a CAC reader. In the Army, we use CACs, Common Access Cards, and a CAC reader right now, a Bluetooth CAC reader that connects. Derived credentials, the purebred process that this is standing up, that's also available in the commercial sector from industry, provides us the ability to make those secure connections, the authentication and the encryption and signaturing process for mobile, and that's a great thing. We're also working with DARPA and Google as well as Netcom on looking at alternative forms of authentication. There are, depends on who you talk to, there are anywhere from 15 to 25 different attributes, individual attributes that can identify a person. We see them some in movies and stuff, the stride, your voice, the way you type, and DARPA's looking at these things to combine them to give us something other than that physical, that token type acknowledgement of individuals. So there's a lot going on, and it's going to be critical in the future because, again, the most important thing in your ecosystem is your user. Second most important thing in your ecosystem is going to be the data, because that's what the user uses to make decisions. So we in the Army were looking at that ecosystem, that 5-component system as mobile, not a individual component of it. So identity management is critical. The user is primary in your system.
Great. Anybody else have anything to add there?
Rick, how do you see the Army? This is Steve Brady. How do you see the Army using things like mobile threat detection solutions in a broader category?
In a broader category, we are looking at one of the interesting things is we're looking at some of the vendors right now that provide us what we call endpoint security. I was going to say point of sale security, but endpoint security. There are several people out there that are already doing this, and and it's interesting you asked the question because 5 years ago I had a tablet initiative in the Pentagon, and I put our current endpoint security build on these small tablets. Well, you can imagine what happened with the smaller processor, smaller memory. The tools that we put on the device basically crippled the device and it became useless. So we have to look at security appropriate to the mission. And the industry analogy that we use is don't protect diamonds like they're toothbrushes and don't protect toothbrushes like they're diamonds. If you do, you're going to end up with a lot of toothbrushes and not many diamonds. So we need to make security appropriate to the mission, and we're looking at endpoint security in companies like Lookout, and Raytheon's got some tools, and VM's got some tools that provide us some endpoint security that basically does malware analysis on the device. And we're also looking at, in the Army, we're considering some hypervisors, some zero client type technologies that the device is just a visual. It's actually the mobile application, the mobile space is actually in the cloud. So we're adapting cloud security and just bringing the pixels and the images forward. So there really is nothing on the device to protect anymore. It's just protecting the device itself.
Great. Well, I've actually been told, I have this note in front of me and I wasn't paying attention very well, but if you want to unmute your phone to ask a question if you're in the car or whatever and you can't get back, that's fine. Just for informational purposes, we are liaising the ATARC, the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center. We're relating to the Mobile Services Category Team and starting up the ATARC Mobile Working Group, basically taking on each of these challenge areas. We're going to have a mix of government and industry kind of working together to solve these problems. And one of the things we're doing is information sharing. We were lucky enough that DHS released a very comprehensive mobile policy, and it was probably about 40 pages, and we got the opportunity to share that with the rest of the government. And I know Rick has done a lot of sharing with the Department of Defense type of policies. So somebody like the Peace Corps doesn't have to, pay $500,000 for a study when they can just borrow what's already been paid for by the taxpayers. So I think a lot of the things that Rick was talking about, the different policies, getting them collected, so that when I'm an agency, I can say, here's my policy. I kind of like what the Department of the Army is doing. I kind of like what the Air Force is doing. I'll borrow bits and pieces of these best practices. I think that's something that we can kind of do to kind of move this along. But we have, I think we're at the closing thoughts phase of the program. Does anybody have anything that we need to talk about? Kind of future. Where do you see us going? And well, we're right here. We got an election we got the new president coming in. We got 2017. We're at the end of this year. Where do you think we're going to be if we do this next year at this time? What's going to change? Where do you think some of the things are going to change? And maybe Steve's looking at me like he wants to say something. So
there's going to have to be a more secure way for the president to access Twitter. I know that.
I didn't know we were going to go there, but.
Generally I think that, some of these things are going to come down. There's a lot of people, a lot of agencies that I'm talking to that are looking at this Mobile Center of Excellence, concept. I think that, they're piloting a lot of things right now, so it'll be pretty interesting in the next year to see, what they actually get out and how useful it is and what the lessons learned are going to be.
John?
Well, I mean, the future for us is really to work with ATARC, work with industry, work with other agencies, and to continuing to share and facilitate this information, to continue to define terms. We're looking to execute in fiscal 15. If you have not seen the mobile services category roadmap, I believe you guys have a link to it on the ATARC site, don't you? So head over to the ATARC site, take a look. The nice thing about mobile the nice thing about what we've done is that we've written it in clay, soft clay, and so that as things emerge and as things become relevant, or as things become evident, we can address them as a community. We can address them, and well, as Tom was saying, just leverage information among each other so that we could save time and save money.
Great. Rick?
Yeah, I think this is exactly what we need to do. Take advantage of smart people in the space, look at what's going on, and I hope next year that I'm speaking from the Army, that I have people actually working, what I'm going to call in this mobile space. It has to happen. We have to get better at what we do, and I think this is a good step towards it, and I would love to see us next year not talking about how we're going to do it, but talking about what we've done.
Yeah, and I think to kind of close this up, I think I would like to see every agency, and we've done this in the Army, we've done this in GSA, but who is the mobile lead for each agency? We don't know that. There's not a comprehensive place to get that because sometimes there is no mobile lead, or there's multiple mobile leads.
Well, not yet.
But I know, but it's in that document,
right.
In John's document, and I think that would be good. And then what does that person need to do? For starters, is set up a mobile center for excellence and be an overlay to the rest of the organization. Be talking to acquisition officers. Be talking to programs, and you need to have a center of gravity. You need to have somebody in charge. If you don't have anybody in charge, nobody's going to be in charge, and we're going to flail around. At least you have some center of gravity. I think that would be helpful. So hopefully that will happen next year. And then also the mobile first. We've been talking about it for 5 or 6 years. We're starting to see some new applications get out there. But when you're designing an application, you are designing for mobile first. So thank you for your attention and your participation. And this is our inaugural kickoff, and we plan on doing this every month. And well, everybody have a great holidays, and we'll see you